Hello! So before the big Clionadh restock happens this Thursday, I figured I would go ahead, do a little brand overview, and give you my thoughts on the different shadow formulas and nail polishes. So if you want to see some of my picks for the sale, see what's on my wish list for the sale, and see everything that is currently in my collection, then go ahead and just keep on watching and subscribe. I actually want to talk about the nail polishes first, so that way I can move them out of the way and then we can focus on the shadows. So I actually have all 4 of the nail polishes that I own on my fingernails right now for what may be one of the most chaotic manicures I have ever done, but I wanted to show all of the colors to you like in practice. So overall, the Clionadh formula has really impressed me. I have had these polishes on for about 24 hours at this point, and I did not use a base coat, but I did use a top coat. I used the Sally Hansen Quick Dry top coat, which is my favorite. I've tried so many, and that one is the best to me personally. And I was outside digging in my landscaping, which I have river rocks. Don't get river rocks, you guys. When we bought our house, there were river rocks. Don't do it. But anyways, so long story short, I've been digging around in dirt and rocks all day long without gloves. And honestly, the manicure is still looking really nice. Like there's a little bit of chipping here on the edges of a couple of the nails, but for the most part, they look really good, and I think that speaks to Clionadh's longevity. The nail polishes really do last quite a while on me, and I also find that they dry pretty quickly, which I love if I have to do multiple coats. So speaking of multiple coats, I want to jump into the different formulas. So I have 2 from the Stained Glass collection, 1 from the Slickadelic collection, and then 1 from their like spring collection. I think it was like the Gummy Worm collection or something like that. So the first color that I have is Embellishment. This is one of the stained glass shadows that I also own. It's got a mustard kind of crelly base with a green to red shimmer throughout. And you can definitely see that green for the most part. I've got this one on my index finger, my pinky finger, and then my ring finger. And I find that this one is sheer on 2 coats, which is something that I personally like. It's not like completely see-through, but I can get glimpses of my visible nail line depending on the angle. I don't get that reddish orange shimmer quite as much in this one, but you can see it in some harsh angles. The next polish that I have is Hilt, and I have been really enjoying this one. It's got like a cornflower blue base with a peach to gold to a little bit chartreusey kind of shift throughout it. This one though is honestly like more of a pearlescent kind of finish. You don't really get any discernible shimmer. Like in Embellishment, you really can see those sparkles. In Hilt, it really does just kind of look like a sheen, and I love that finish. It doesn't look streaky at all though, which I feel like some of the older kind of pearlescent finishes from like OPI do. So I'm very happy about that, and this is probably one of my favorites. I mean, really all of these are. I put them in my top favorite, like 20 favorite special shades of nail polish. I'll link that down below if you're curious. Okay, so the next shade is Grow, and I have this on my thumb, my pinky, and then my middle finger. This is a green base, and then it's got an orange to gold and kind of red shift in it. And then it also has little holographic micro sparkles in it as well, which I feel like you can kind of see on camera. This one, really nice. Those sparkles do make it like a little bit textured feeling, but with a top coat, you can't tell at all. And then lastly, I've got the shade Warped from the Slickadelic collection, and this is a magnetic polish, which is really cool. They label them on the bottom if they are magnetic. So this one It looks purple and blue, but then it also has like a green to gold in there as well. And when you use the magnets, you can see both. I didn't this time. I was like kind of in a rush, so I just painted it on, and you can see when you do that, you mostly are getting like that purple, pink, blue, and then you can also see like a lot of sparkle in there as well. Honestly, with the Clionadh polishes, in my experience, they all are a great formula. They're priced really fairly for indie nail polish. They kind of seem to range from about $10 to $13 depending on the polish, which is super fair. And if you find a color you like, I feel like you will probably enjoy it. At least I've really enjoyed them. Now, with nail polish out of the way, it is time to get into the eyeshadows. And first up, we have one of their circle pan shadows, which are already less expensive. And I have a note about this. So this is the shade Linny, and this one is beautiful. This reminds me of the Terra Moon's cosmetics formula of like palladium, rubidium, all of those. It's a kind of rose gold pink, maybe leaning a little bit more pink than that. And then it's got a silver like sparkle throughout. It really, I mean, there's no shifts in this shade, but there is a ton of sparkle. I'm not sure if on camera you guys are seeing how insanely sparkly this is, but it is a beautiful one. This and this shade, which we'll get to later, are two of like my top recommendations. These are going to be $5 Canadian, which is a freaking steal for a shadow this beautiful. Top recommendation. But I want to add a caveat because this shade is insanely sparkly and beautiful, but I also have some of the older circle pans. This is the shade Pixie Ring, which they don't sell anymore, and you can see it's just not as sparkly. It's just kind of a more like normal kind of shadow that I would expect from like a mainstream brand, whereas this is indie goodness. So what I've kind of discerned from looking at the website is that typically there are shades in the circle pans that are listed at $5.39 Canadian versus $5.79 Canadian. And the ones that are $5.79, like these two, seem to be more sparkly compared to the $5.39 shades, which are a little bit more standard. So I know this is a little bit of a sneak peek, but I wanted to address that formula difference in the circle pans before I got too far, just in case you do end up picking some of those shades up. Next up, we have the shade Torch. This is a glitter multi-chrome. So this is one that's priced at like $7.48 or something like that Canadian dollars. And it has a reddish pink to an orange to a little bit of a gold depending on the angle. This is one that I just wore over the weekend and it looks so good. You really can see those shifts like so easily. This is a type of like color shift that a lot of brands have. So I would be wary of that. Make sure you don't have any dupes if that's something you want to avoid. But this version of this shade is really nice. And so this is another one I would recommend, especially at that like $7.49 or whatever Canadian dollar price point. This is a really good one for that price. And like, I mean, I don't really understand the pricing all that much, but this one, it feels like a good deal. This next one is King's Feast. And this is a different formula. I think that this is like the Glitter Vibrant multi-chrome maybe. So this one has kind of a reddish base with a purple to pink to orange kind of shift in it. And I like this one. It's not my favorite, but I think that might just be a me thing. I mean, formula-wise, I find that it performs well. I will say it seems like this type of shade must be really hard to formulate because I find that they're always a little bit piecey from brands. And out of the ones I have, this is my favorite version of this type of shade, but it's not a shade that I gravitate towards. And so I don't know if I would pick it up again, but it is nice if this is like your type of color. I think this one's a little bit more expensive though, maybe around like $10, so keep that in mind. This next one is called Bloodline, and this is one that I feel like people loved from the original launch of like the stained glass collection. This one has a kind of like, I don't know how to say, like pinkish red. Like it's not maroon, but it's something like a deeper kind of like magenta, maybe that's the color I'm looking for. And then you can see it's got that gold shift that also shifts to a green and a little bit of blue. I find that the blue is kind of hard to spot like in practice on the eyes. It's a beautiful one. I do find that it stains on me, and I don't know if it's like as worth the hype as people make it out to be. I just feel like brands have this type of shade and this type of shift time and time again. This one, I believe, is like $13 off the top of my head, but don't quote me on that. I should have double checked before I started filming, but I didn't. I'll insert prices as I'm talking. But this one's a little bit more expensive, and so I don't know if I would repurchase it. But it is pretty. Like, it is pretty, and if you do pick it up, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I just think that it's a pretty common type of shift that we see in a lot of shadows. Next up, though, if you've been here before, hi, thanks for coming back. If you haven't been here, hello, my name is Catherine, and I love the shade Palace from Clionadh. This is that shade, and I, for the life of me, cannot get the green in this shadow to show up in my swatches ever. I can't. You can see the yellow pretty strong there, but it goes to a bright green in real life. I actually wore this shade to the Polish and Beauty Expo. I posted a vlog of that, so if you want to see it in practice, you can go check out that video. But this is a pink to a peachy orange to a gold to a chartreuse to like a lime green. It is such a beautiful shade. I feel like maybe that's the best I've ever been able to capture the shift, but I still am not getting that green. But this one is so beautiful. I have not found that this stains on my eyes, but my friend Teresa on Instagram did say that this stained, so keep that in mind. But this one is a pearlescent finish, and so it's a little bit smoother, I guess, than some of the others, and I find that it just melts into the skin in such a satisfying way. I really love this shade. Okay, before I move on, I feel like that's the best I've ever gotten the green to show up, so hopefully you can kind of see how bright of a green it goes to. I guess I should have said this before. I feel like this video is kind of all over the place right now, but I've purchased from Clionadh 3 times, and my most recent time was a pretty small order. I really wanted to pick up the nail polishes, and I picked up like 4 shadows when I did that order. I picked up this one, and then these 2. This is the shade Baroque, and it is also in that pearlescent finish. It was one that I really considered at first, but these shades are pricey. I know that they're around $15 US, so whatever the conversion is for Canadian. So I didn't want to pick up both of them when I made my first order of the expansion shades, but I did, like, once I realized how amazing Palace was, I was like, okay, maybe I should pick up Baroque. And Baroque is different. I can see why they're both considered pearlescent, but this is like the shade if Palace seems like a little too punchy for you. Like if you look at Palace and you're like, that green is pretty out there, I don't know if I want to wear that. This one is more of like a purple you can see compared to like the pink that Palace is. And then it shifts to a gold. And then it does shift to a little bit of a green, but it's a much like softer, like kind of spring olive green compared to like the lime green of Palace. And it also just doesn't shift as hard overall. So I think that this one may be the more approachable everyday version, but because of that, I also find it to be like a little less special just because it's not quite as shifty, but the base color that you get most of the time with this one is very, very pretty. Is it like $15 pretty? I don't know. It's up for you to decide, but I am glad I have it. And if you know, you're shopping the sale, it may be worth checking out. It really just depends. Next, we have the shade Cobblestone. This is one of the Earth Vibrant multi-chromes, and this one is priced like lowest out of that collection, which is really surprising to me because this is a very nice shade. This one has a gray base, and then on top, you've got that like kind of reddish pink sparkle that then shifts to a gold and then a pretty bright green. I would say the green in Palace and Cobblestone is pretty similar. It really just comes down to like those different base colors. And then I feel like Palace, you can see a lot more color variation throughout the shift, whereas Cobblestone is mostly just that red pink to a gold to a green. This one though, I do find is a dupe for a more expensive Touch of Glam shade. I believe it's the 21st from the Unnamed collection. So maybe worth checking out. And then this is one that we've already talked about. The shade's actually discontinued, but I wanted to show it just for posterity's sake. This is the shade Pixie Ring. And you can see it's pretty much just a like shimmery soft pink. Nothing super special about that one. Next, we've got the shade Opulent. This is priced more around the Bloodline price, even though it is a glitter multi-chrome. This one's got a soft kind of muted lavender base, maybe more of a lilac. It's a little bit warmer. And then on top, it's got a gold to green to a little bit of like a soft like sky blue shift in it. Shift-wise, it's actually pretty similar to Bloodline. And I like this one better. I find it easier to wear since it's a little bit lighter, but I also am fair, so use your discretion. I don't necessarily know if you need both of these, if like you're only looking for that shift. Obviously though, the base colors in those are pretty different. Next, we've got one of the like gray-based deep iridescent shades. This is the shade Lapis Lazuli, and it has, again, a gray base with a purple to blue to pink to like peachy gold shift. That peachy gold is kind of hard to see except at like the harshest angles. And this one is interesting. It's more of a pearlescent finish than these two are, but I think it's something about this type of pigment, this like blue to purple pigment, that seems to be a little less sparkly overall, regardless of what shade it's in. This one is pretty expensive. I think it's even more expensive than the pearlescent multi-chromes. So I don't know if I would recommend it. I don't think it's like quite special enough to be worth that high price tag, but I do enjoy it. And I do like that gray base. I find it's softer and easier to blend into other things rather than like if it had that harsh purple base behind it. Next is the shade Tracery. This is another glitter multi-chrome, although to me, this is probably like the least multi-chrome shade out of all of the different like stained glass collection. But this one, it's like a purple that goes to a pink, and then I guess maybe gold, maybe, but I think that's kind of pushing it. This one, I don't know. I mean, it's a bright purple, but it's not like the most special shade, and that's where I'll leave that. This next shade is Royalty. This is another vibrant multi-chrome like Bloodline. This one's got a deep like blue leaning purple base with a gold to teal to blue shift in there. This one, very similar shift, you know, maybe a little less like striking of a gold. It goes to that teal a little bit faster, but I have a dupe for this one, so I'll show that to you guys in a second. This one, again, for $13, I don't know. I feel like you can get similar types of things from a lot of different brands at this point, so I don't know if it's worth that $13 price tag, but on sale, it may be worth it. This next shade is Aqua Fortis. I'm pretty sure this one was discontinued too. This one stains like a mofo. It stains so bad. It is a pretty bright blue. There's supposed to be a gold shift. I don't really see it, but there is kind of like a gold sheen on top. Next is the shade Emblem. This one has a teal base with a pink to gold kind of shift on top. I don't know if this one's super worth it to me. I feel like a lot of brands have a type of shade like this. Again, It's a little bit more expensive, and you know, I'm not a blue person, so I'm probably like the last person you should ask about blue shadows. But this one, it's nice. It's got good shifts. You can see that like pink and gold pretty well there. I don't know if it's worth that high price tag though. Next, we've got the shade Ornamental, and I actually really like this one. I don't think it's a multi-chrome. Let's just get that out of the way. It's got an interesting base color. It's kind of like a taupe almost, or like a mauve maybe. And then on top, it's got this like kind of like olivey gold sparkle. It maybe shifts a little bit more like teal, but mostly what you're getting is this color. I find this color to be pretty unique though. I don't have a lot like it, and so I like this one, and it's again at that like $7.50 price point. So for the price, I think that this is a really cool, unique shade for me personally. But if you're not a gold person, I don't know if this is green enough for you to enjoy this. Next is Embellishment, and it really does look like exactly like the nail polish, which is kind of fun, you know, if you want to match your nails and eyes. This one's got a mustard yellow base with a green to orangish red kind of shift. You can kind of see it there. It's pretty subtle. I really like this shade because I am a yellow queen, but I will say I do have a version of this kind of shift from Looksy that is $3 versus like $9 for this one. So, you know, this one has a stronger sparkle, and some people don't get along well with the Looksy formula. So if that's the case, this might be a good alternative for you, but it is a little pricey compared to some alternatives. Next, we've got Trinket. This one is a bright like yellow based orange with a silvery blue to pink shift. I really like this one. A lot of brands have dupes to a shade like this, like Axis from Terra Moons. I don't have that one. I have the Clionadh version, and I really like the Clionadh version. Got some good strong shifts to it. I feel like you can see that pink a little bit on the edge there, and it's just such an interesting like warm versus cool kind of shift combination that it's really fun and still kind of like not deep in a way that makes it difficult for me with my fair skin to wear. All right, we're getting up into my elbow fold. I don't know, do people call this a weenus? I feel like I remember in middle school people calling it that. I don't know what it's actually called. But last but not least, we have the shade Centaur. This is the other circle pan that is insane. Do you see that sparkle? Do you see that sparkle? This is like a taupey kind of brown shade with a ton of silver sparkle packed in. It is beautiful. This and Linny are so good. Okay, let me show you on the back of my hand so that way we can see the sparkle a little bit better. Look at those. Those are so beautiful. Top recommendation. Love them both. All right, here's my best attempt to show all of these shades all together. And just to run down the list, we've got Linny, Torch, Queen's Banquet, Bloodline, Palace, Baroque, Cobblestone, Pixie Ring, Opulent, Lapis Lazuli, Tracery, Royalty, Aqua Fortis, Emblem, Ornamental, Embellishment, Trinket, and Centaur. I am going to go wash off my arms, then I'll tell you my top picks from Clionadh for the sale. Then I'll show you comparisons, and then lastly, I will tell you what I plan on picking up. All right, so keep in mind my preferences are kind of, you know, a factor when I'm choosing what shades I would recommend, so take this with a grain of salt. But my recommendations for the sale out of everything I've tried would be these down at the bottom. So first, we've got Centaur and Linny, which I would suggest as like my top recommendation because I just feel like that $5 Canadian price point is a great deal for these. I think a lot of other brands would charge a lot higher price point, and I think that they're both beautiful and extremely wearable and easy to use. Of course, out of the stained glass collection, I would recommend Palace as my favorite. I just think that this is a beautiful shade that I haven't seen a ton like. but I do have some alternatives to show you. Next, Opulent. Even though it's 13 bucks, I think that it is really pretty, and it's my favorite version of like this gold to teal to, you know, blue shift, but it's up to you. This is just my favorite out of those types of shades, and I think it's the most unique. Next, we've got Torch, which for this type of color, I think that it's a fair price and performs really well, very shifty IRL in the light of day. Then we've got Ornamental. I think that this is a really interesting color, but I will say it's definitely less shifty than most of the other ones that I have from Clionadh. Trinket is just such a cool colorway, but it really is up to you about which brand's version of this shade is worth picking up for you. We've got Cobblestone, which again, super unique, out of the earth vibrance. It's the most fairly priced in my opinion, and it's a good dupe for more expensive shades. And then lastly, Embellishment with a grain of salt, knowing that if you like looksy and you're okay to kind of do a little bit of mixology, you can get something pretty similar for a fraction of the price. To make this a nice, satisfying, even number, my honorable mention is Baroque, which again, I would choose Palace, you know, but I do think that this formula overall seems to be really nice with these two shades, and this is definitely the more maybe approachable version. All right, so I want to launch right into comparisons. First of all, these two circle pans, I don't really have any dupes for either of them. I feel like the closest thing might be Celestial Petal from Terra Moons for this Pixie Ring shade, but that is like a whole different level of beautiful, and the colors aren't super close, so I was like, it's not even worth it. But I will tell you about my actual comparisons. So this is the Clionadh shade Trinket, and the comparison that I have is the Looksy shade Gingerbread. I find this to be one of the flakier Looksy shades. It needs to be built up a little bit. This one has more of a peachy kind of base. You can see maybe the difference there when the light isn't hitting them as much, but the shift colors in them are pretty similar. They both have that silvery blue that then shifts to a pink. Next up, we've got Cobblestone, and the closest dupe that I have to that is the 21st from Touch of Glam. I don't support Touch of Glam, so in this instance, I feel like the Clionadh is definitely the way to go. It's a little less strong of a shift, but it also is like half the price. Next is Embellishment, and this one, you kind of need a matte, like mustard yellow if you want to get the same tone, but the flip is very similar in this Looksy shade Margarita. This one is more of a bright yellow, but with that mustard base, you can get it to look pretty similar. And then it's got that green sparkle on top that then shifts to a little bit of an orange, which I don't know if I'm going to be able to capture on camera. Now we've got Ornamental, and the closest thing that I have is the NBA Cosmetics shade here for the Booze. This one I feel like has a very similar, like kind of olivey gold shimmer throughout it, but this shade from Clionadh has more of that like mauve-y kind of base, whereas the one from NBA has a gray base, and the one from Clionadh is a little bit cheaper. Next, we've got Torch, and the shade that I have to compare it to is Gallus from Divina, and I feel like the texture of this one is not good, if we're being honest, and so I would go with the Clionadh one. And actually, I just realized I think I might have one more dupe. It's not quite as close as I thought, but this is the shade Falling Leaves from Kristen Lee Cosmetics. Review coming soon. Well, first impressions coming soon. Next, I want to do Linny compared to Deimos from Terra Moons. They aren't the same color, and I recognize that, but I just thought it'd be helpful to show the different pink versions of this really sparkly kind of formula from both brands. And the same goes for Centaur versus Rubidium from Terra Moons. I'm going to show off all of those comparisons one more time, then wipe off my arm to do some more. So now we've got the shade Lapis Lazuli, and this one is not a direct dupe, but I thought it still could be helpful. This is the shade Purple Chakra from Glam Shop. It is way the heck cheaper, and it has like the same kind of idea with like a different colored base. This one's red versus gray, and then it's got like a purple to blue sparkle that goes like maybe a touch gold. Not super gold though, but the shifts in it are similar, so definitely, I mean, this one's way cheaper. I'm not supporting Glam Shop right now, but if you still are, this may be a better alternative. Next is the shade Opulent, and the closest comparison I have is the Copacetic Cosmetics holographic shade Eat the Rich. It has like a similar kind of purple gold thing going on, but this one does have a holographic sparkle, and it doesn't really have that same like multi-chrome shift that Opulent does. Now we've got Emblem, and the closest thing I have is Escape Room from Copacetic. This one's a little bit more blue, but the shifts in it are pretty similar. I would say that the shifts are maybe a little bit stronger in that shade from Clionadh on top. Next, we've got Royalty, and I've got a ton of dupes for this one. First up, this is Painted Lady from Looksy. They're pretty dang similar because I feel like you don't really see those shifts quite as strong on the eyes with Royalty, so they're pretty close. Then I have the shade Oracle from the first round of the M. Jones 15 and Bizarre Volta collab with Shine by SD, and I was gifted this one by my friend Riley, so thanks Riley. And then lastly, we've got Lethal Cosmetics Singularity, which is more expensive, but there's definitely something in essence that is similar. As you can see though, dupe-wise, the Looksy is the closest, and I feel like for $3 versus $13, I would go with the Looksy. Next up, we've got Tracery, and this one is getting compared to yet another Looksy shadow. This is the shade Stormy Morning, which I think they still have on the site. I'm not 100% sure, but they're pretty close. Next is the shade Baroque, and I wanted to compare this to the Sugar Drizzle Polish Single Shadow. I think this is called Sugar Kiss or Sugar Rain, one of those two. This one's actually more expensive, and the Clionadh one is a way better value. You can see this one looks a little bit more purple, but the shifts in them are like the exact same. To finish up, I'm gonna go ahead and put these last few on my other arm. So we've got Bloodline, and I wanted to compare it to Anterra's not because I think that they are similar base color, but just to show that kind of shift is pretty common. This is a shade from Terra Moons, and they're about the same price, I believe. Next up, we've got King's Banquet from Clionadh, and I wanted to compare this to the shade Starfire from Divina, which is another brand that I'm not currently supporting. If you're curious about all these brands I'm not supporting, I will link my video I did on that topic, but I think you can see how the Divina one just doesn't perform as well. They are a similar kind of thing, but in this one, the Clionadh is better if you are dying for like this type of shade. And you can see on my fingers how similar they are in concept. And then last up, we've got Palace, which I'm gonna put in the middle so you can see it compared to both of these shades. This first one is Nightmare Eyes from that same Shine by SD collab. This again, given to me by Riley, so shout out to Riley. And they're pretty similar. I feel like Palace is the more wha-bam version. And then I also have the shade Yummy from Glam Shop. This is one of their multi-chromes. It's less expensive, but texture-wise, they are very different. I also find Yummy doesn't shift quite as green as Palace does, but they are pretty similar if you're looking for like this kind of pink at a lower price point. It's a lot flakier and sparklier of a texture. Here's that last set of dupes all together. If you've got any other good dupes, let us know down below so that way we aren't buying duplicates of shade like colors that we already have. So then lastly, I thought I'd let you guys know what I'm planning on picking up for the sale. I'm planning on getting the nail polishes Lineage and Palace. I also am kind of considering the shade Radiance because I think it'd be a good topper for things, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And then I'm considering a few of the different Slickadelic polishes, although I'm only going to pick up one. It's just a matter of which one. Psilocybin is kind of what I'm leaning towards, but I'll keep you updated. I also am considering picking up one of the new shades of nail polish that are releasing this week. I'm looking specifically at the shade Spicy Margarita because I cannot resist an acidic, like chartreusey kind of color. Oh, chef's kiss, so good. So from the stained glass collection, I actually only have 3 I'm planning on picking up. I'm planning on picking up Auric, which is another deep iridescent that's like a yellow, orange, peach kind of thing. And then I'm also considering Adornment. That one I'm not 100% on, but it kind of seems like a good blend of translucency and sunbeam. And so I thought that, you know, instead of picking up 2, I could just get that one. I don't know if I have anything like the same, and so I don't know. I'm still trying to decide on that one. And then the last one I'm planning on picking up is the Earth Vibrant shade Royal Peach, which I swatched in person when I was at the Polish and Beauty Expo, and I love it. It is such a beautiful, like neutral adjacent kind of multi-chrome. So that one I'm definitely picking up. Again, I'm becoming an orange person. I don't know how this happened, but I'm into the oranges. I also am planning on picking up one of the new Jeweled Light multi-chromes and one of the multi-dimensional multi-chromes. The Jeweled Light shade I'm looking at is the shade Burnish, and then the multi-dimensional multi-chrome that I'm looking at is the shade Ferric. When I swatched all of them in person, those were the 2 that stood out to me and that I thought I would get the most use out of in a day-to-day kind of way. And then lastly, I'm looking at picking up a few of the single shadows from the Dragon Fruit palette in collaboration with Emily Violet Marie. And those shades, I'm looking at Dragon Teeny. That seems like it's going to be similar to Antares, but I think it's a brighter pink and more of a sparkly finish rather than like a kind of like smooth finish. When I swatched it in person, I was really impressed, and I felt like I could see that green shift in it pretty well, which I think is hard most of the time with shifts like this. I also am looking at the shade Infusion. I love me a good purple, and that one has like kind of an iridescence to it almost. There's not a ton of base color, and I really liked the shift in person. It's a little bit lighter than most of the purples I have. And then I am looking at the 2 greens, Dragonfly, and I'm not even going to attempt to say the chartreuse color, but swatched them both in person, love them. Very excited about those. And then lastly, I'm looking at the larger shade Effervescent. When I swatched that one in person, it was really unique to me, and I kind of hate the pan shape. I wish that they were coming out the singles as like the same unilateral kind of size, but even though it's got that long rectangular shape, I really like the color, so I'm thinking about that one too. In my experience, customer service from Clionadh has been great. I had a problem with my first order. One of the shadows came broken. I don't have it here. I actually ended up decluttering that one. It was one of the Series 1 iridescent multi-chromes, and I don't recommend those. I found them to be really powdery, or at least the one I had was really powdery and just didn't live up to the other iridescent formulas out there. But when I did have an issue, their customer service was great to work with. Shipping, I find that Clionadh has gotten a lot better with shipping over the years. It comes, you know, as quick as it can. They've got a ton of orders, then it might be a little bit slower, but you know, on times when I haven't ordered in like a busy peak moment, I've gotten my order pretty quickly. But something to know is that it is a little pricey. It's coming from Canada, so if you're like me and you live in the United States, I just looked it up for the sale to kind of do the math to figure out if it would be worth buying in person at full price or wait for the sale to buy, at the discounted rate, and it ended up being cheaper, but shipping is pretty expensive. It was like $13-ish to ship to where I am. Overall, though, I feel like Clionadh is considered one of like the GOAT kind of indie single eyeshadow brands, and there's good reason for it. I have enjoyed their formulas. They definitely do the best job of describing the different formulas and having things split into different categories. It makes a lot of sense to me. I do find that some of their stuff can be overpriced, but I am generally happy with the quality and consistency, and to me that kind of is worth a little bit more than some of those brands that are like mid-price tier where it's kind of a shot in the dark. Looksy is low price, and so I'm a little bit more willing to take that gamble compared to like Clionadh. I know if I'm going to pay $10, it's going to be a good shade. Let me know in the comments down below though, are you planning on picking up anything during the restock and sale this summer? Do you have any Clionadh shadows already? What are your top recommendations? What are you planning on picking up? Whatever your thoughts are, just leave them down below. I love to hear from you and talk to you guys in the comments. And until I see you next time, I hope that you stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye!